So, Metroid Prime 4, kind of a big deal, kind of a hot title, kind of a game and a franchise that I talk about quite often on Rule of Two Review. Of course, it's a game we're all very much anticipating, and it's a game with a lot of mystery, which is kind of one of the coolest parts about it. I know that it's very frustrating for a lot of us to still be wondering so much about this game, and Nintendo has definitely teased us with this game and reveals and information, not really given us a whole lot. Some people could argue that maybe the game was revealed too early, because of course that was over a year and a half ago at this point, in E3 June 2017, that they told us this game was coming. And we've been waiting this whole time, so yeah, it can be a little bit frustrating. I'm definitely dying to finally understand this game. And so through all that, like I said, the game is definitely mysterious. There's a lot of questions we have. Now, if you think about it, there's also a lot of things that we should technically know about the game, even before Nintendo shows it to us. And of course, I use the term know, quote, know, a little bit loosely, but I think it's fair to say that with a game that's the fourth in a series, and also like whatever the 14th as far as the franchise ever beginning back in '87 with the first game, you'd have to think that there's a lot that we can infer about what to expect from the game. We know it's going to be first person, we should have a pretty good idea of the pace of the game, the feel and the flow of combat, what the graphical engine is going to look like. Things like that. We should have a pretty good idea of what to expect. The map system, the inventory system, what the beams are going to be like. But there's also a lot of other things, some of the smaller details, some of the intricacies of the game design, and maybe even some of the modes that might be included that we are still wondering about. Now, of course, as you no doubt know, probably by the title of this video, what we're discussing is the idea of multiplayer coming to Metroid Prime 4. And this conversation has existed for almost as long as our knowledge of the game has, which again goes back to E3 2017. I think one of the first things people started to wonder, considering how the video game industry and how Nintendo has grown from 2007 when Metroid Prime 3 came out, all the way up until 2017, literally a decade later when they confirmed Metroid Prime 4, people realized, well, online competitive and cooperative gameplay really has become a big deal in that last decade. Yes, it was present in 2007 when Metroid Prime 3 released, but not to the degree that it is now. I mean, it was such a different landscape as far as online gameplay back then. And so with Metroid Prime 4 coming, it's like, okay, well, now that online gameplay is a big deal, now that so many games come with multiplayer built into them, some games even focus almost entirely on multiplayer, and heck, even Nintendo themselves take online gaming pretty seriously now. They did so in the Wii U era, and they're certainly doing it now in the Switch era. And now, we're not going to get into the whole debate about whether or not their online service that they're offering right now is actually quality or not, whether it's worth the money that they're charging or not, yada, yada, yada. There is a debate and a conversation there. I've had it many times. We just have to look at the fact that Nintendo, just by the simple, by dint of them having a paid online service for their current console, it shows that they are taking it seriously. They care about it. They acknowledge that people care about it, and gamers are interested in online gameplay. And so, now that there's a Metroid Prime 4 coming out in this current era, when the Switch and Nintendo's paid online service are actual things, is there a reason to expect multiplayer in Metroid Prime 4? And I think beyond that, what's exciting for me when talking about this idea is whether or not multiplayer could actually benefit Metroid Prime 4. And I think that those are, in a way, kind of two different topics. Like, should we expect it in Metroid Prime 4 as topic 1? And would it actually benefit the game being topic 2? I think that that's a really interesting kind of aspect and angle to consider. And so when we look at whether or not it makes sense, I think that the first thing most or all of us probably go to is Metroid Prime 2 in 2004, where Nintendo did include an offline-only multiplayer mode. And it was all competitive. It was essentially like the Metroid Prime version of like what Halo and Call of Duty Deathmatch was at that time. Actually, not even really Call of Duty, I'm sorry. In 2004, Call of Duty was doing nothing like what it is nowadays. So it was really more, Halo was more the analogous sort of game series that you would think of, and it was split screen, you know, just trying to hunt down somebody else who was a different colored Samus as you, and you're going around maps that are based on locations from Metroid Prime 2, and you're just trying to shoot each other. And it was interesting. It was unique. I thought it was a bold choice for them to try to include this in 2004 in the sequel to Metroid Prime. And you know, one of the first things I think about when I think about the Prime 2's multiplayer is the fact that it did not in any way detract from the single player experience. In fact, Metroid Prime 2's actual game, the story, the campaign, that single player mode is easily the longest and the most complex single player of any of those Metroid Prime games. And so that's really a testament to how well the design of the single player mode was, as well as the fact that they could incorporate a very not broken multiplayer mode and still not have it detract from the quality of the single player. And I think that really says a lot about the quality of those games and the quality of Retro Studios' development. When you look at the multiplayer mode itself, it wasn't exciting, it wasn't filled with bells and whistles, it wasn't doing a whole lot of really unique or great things. But, like I said a second ago, it wasn't broken. In fact, it did work, it was kind of fun, and what I appreciated about it is they found ways to incorporate both the lock-on and the morph ball into the combat. And when you think about how those Metroid Prime games play in first person, where you do use a lock-on mechanic, and really no other first-person game or first-person shooter does, and then it also has the morph ball, something else that no other first-person game or any game really does, the fact that they found a way to make those Samus and Metroid-specific elements actually work in the multiplayer mode was pretty impressive, man. And so at the end of the day, it was a paper-thin and unexciting, but ultimately fine multiplayer mode based completely on competitive shooting at each other kind of gameplay. And that was fine. And so now when we think about a Metroid Prime 4 coming out in 2019 or 2020, does it make sense? Are we going to be able to expect multiplayer in that game? And I definitely think that yes, we have pretty good reason to expect it. And beyond that, yes, I think it could actually benefit the game. Now, I'll admit to you guys, as recently as 6 months ago, I would have told you that no, I don't think that it would benefit the game. Maybe we're going to see it in Metroid Prime 4, but I don't think it's a smart idea. I don't want them to do that. I don't want them to risk taking time and effort and resources away from the single player mode and putting it into some weird online thing that they're going to force into Metroid Prime 4 and possibly just break or ruin the experience. That's not what Metroid or Metroid Prime is supposed to be, so I don't care about the multiplayer stuff. But literally over the last, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, really my opinion has changed. And my inspiration to make this video came from a live stream I did a couple of nights ago. And it came up in that live stream, and I talked about it quite a bit, and that's where I shared my opinion on why I think multiplayer could make sense and could be good for the game. And I was like, yeah, I should probably make my own video topic on this because I think it's really interesting and important to discuss. And honestly, I think that if we look at why I think it's very likely it's going to happen, it's kind of what I've already said. I think it's just because in the 2019 Switch era of Nintendo, the current Nintendo we have right now, and the way they're developing games like Breath of the Wild, like Mario Odyssey, you know, creating the Splatoon franchise and doing so well with that, making literally their best Smash Brothers ever recently, and just so many things that they're doing, the quality of their game development, their dedication to multiplayer and online gameplay, it just gives me reason to think that, you know, Metroid Prime 4 is going to be one of the biggest and most important releases of the Switch. I mean, I do think it'll sell very well, but it's not going to sell, you know, Odyssey numbers and Breath of the Wild numbers. That's what I'm not trying to say. But it will be a big title. I think it's going to be the most successful Metroid title ever. Could be the best game ever. Who even knows? And so I think that they might want to continue doing what they've been so successful at in a brand new Metroid game on the Switch. And in this era where online gameplay makes sense and where Nintendo has tried online and multiplayer gameplay in Metroid 3 times before, not just Metroid Prime 2, but also Metroid Prime Hunters on the DS and then Metroid Prime Federation Force on the 3DS. They've made attempts to include first-person Metroid Prime multiplayer gameplay, both cooperative and competitive. And so I just feel like in this era, there's a great reason to believe Nintendo might try to do something hopefully cool with multiplayer stuff in Metroid Prime 4. And now the bigger part of this conversation, and I think the more interesting part, is how I think this could actually benefit the game. Again, 6 months ago, I would have told you it would have very likely been bad for the game, but I really don't know that that's true anymore. And one of the reasons is we already have the precedence for a Metroid Prime game that has multiplayer modes in it that didn't detract from the single-player experience. And I trust Nintendo, I trust the internal team they have working on this game, and I trust whatever other team they might have helping them develop this game, whether it's Bandai or somebody else, or maybe nobody. Eventually we'll find out. I just kind of trust Nintendo to not mess Metroid Prime up, And in a world where I think they really could put a multiplayer mode in this game, I trust them not to break the game by doing it and not sacrifice or compromise the quality of the single player story just to force in some dumb multiplayer mode that isn't interesting. I think that they would do it right. And so when you consider the fact that the overall game package would be quality because we trust Nintendo to make it quality, then I start to look at what the benefits of having a quality multiplayer in a Metroid Prime 4 is, and honestly, it's just that it gives the game legs. It gives the game life. It adds longevity to this game and hopefully keeps it relevant and interesting to people and to gamers and Metroid fans for a long time, so that it doesn't just release and it's this incredible 15 or 20 hour experience and it blows our minds and it's, oh my god, I can't believe it, and then it's just done. And yes, I know that obviously we could always go back and play the games and they could add like new plus modes and new game plus modes and stuff like that. Yeah, that's true, and I anticipate playing that through that game twice immediately when it comes out. I'm already taking PTO, time off of work for it. Whenever we find out that release date, I am taking an immediate week off for the release of that game. So yeah, a lot of us could go back and play the game, but that's not the same as always having something new or engaging or fresh to play. And this is where, even though we live in an era where a lot of multiplayer content is kind of being ruined by bad practices in the industry, there are also times where it's a good thing and a beneficial thing and helpful to a good game. And I think that Metroid Prime 4 with a multiplayer mode would be an example of multiplayer actually helping the game, and it would be a good thing for the game. If the single player kicks ass the way they want, and if the multiplayer is awesome and is a lot of fun, and maybe even if they keep adding content to it like they have with Splatoon, then why wouldn't that be a good thing for the game and give people a reason to come back and experience the Metroid Prime 4 experience, everything that makes up that game? I mean, I can't help but get excited about... I'm already excited. Let me say it this way. I'm already excited about the fact that we're going to have all new locations and crazy things to experience in the story of Metroid Prime 4, which is the one and only reason you should ever want or be excited for Metroid Prime 4. But then I get excited beyond that to think, okay, well, if they did a multiplayer mode, imagine all these cool new locations that I haven't even seen yet, and then having some of those locations turned into multiplayer maps. And hey, maybe this is all because I also just enjoy multiplayer games. I even enjoy multiplayer first-person shooters. I love Call of Duty Online. I love Halo Online. And so if a Metroid Prime 4 with an online mode, competitive or cooperative or whatever, is good and the single player rocks like it's supposed to, then I'm just all for it, if you can't tell. And if the game has a reason to live and have like an ongoing community of people who are always turning on and playing Metroid Prime 4 for a year or two after the game releases, that is a good thing. It keeps the Metroid name in the ethosphere and in like the mind share of the gamer beyond just the first month or two when it's out and everyone is just freaking out over how good it is, and then everyone beats the game and then everyone stops talking about it or thinking about it. I mean, it's not like that would be bad for the series, but I think that it would be even better for the series if there was a reason to keep like the Metroid zeitgeist going for longer than that launch window. That just gets me excited, man, and I don't know, that's just kind of how I feel. And so yes, of course, obviously, as I've mentioned a couple of times, this also hinges on the quality of the experience. They've got to not compromise the quality of the single player mode, and if there was a multiplayer mode, they'd have to make that quality too. I mean, if it's bad, if it's kind of paper thin and lame like Metroid Prime 2's was, which again played fine but just didn't do anything special or fancy, then it's not going to work. And it's going to be like, well, you just threw in another dumb multiplayer thing that was barely a distraction and no one likes or cares about, and what a waste of time that was. But I don't think Nintendo would do that. I think Nintendo is either going 100% single player, or if they're throwing in a multiplayer mode, I think they're gonna kill it. They probably understand all of these things I talked about. They know the benefits and the advantages, and Nintendo is just not screwing up the majority of their first-party game development right now. In my opinion, I think they screwed up Mario Tennis. I really didn't like that game. But I also don't really care too much about Mario Tennis. I didn't really play Kirby, but I know it didn't light the world on fire, and so yeah, they've made some kind of mediocre offerings, but when you look at everything else they've done from a first-party development and publishing standpoint, from Zelda, Mario, Splatoon, ARMS, Xenoblade, Smash, Pokemon, I mean, they've killed it in every other arena where it matters. And Metroid is one of their most prized franchises. It doesn't sell like their biggest franchises, like a Mario Kart and a Smash and a Zelda. It doesn't sell that way. but it is important. It's very well loved. It is critically acclaimed. It is a very special, high-tier franchise for Nintendo. And there's no way they're not going to bring their A++ game to this the same way they did with Mario and Zelda and all these other games. Like, they're going to do it. So, without a multiplayer, it's going to be amazing. With the multiplayer, I believe they will do it right. And so, now we just have to play the wait-and-see game as we've been doing for the last, you know, almost 2 years at this point. Where is this freaking game? Where are the details? Where's the release date? And how cool would it be if they actually said, and there's going to be like a multiplayer component to it, you know? I think a lot of people initially would be really like reserved and hesitant and have a lot of trepidation going into the release of the game if they know that there's a multiplayer mode. But again, let me be the calming presence in your life. If we learn, and it's a big if, because it may not happen, but if we learn that multiplayer is coming to Metroid Prime 4, let's just chill. Let's just be okay. Let's just wait for Nintendo to show us what's going on. And if the multiplayer turns out to be bad or lame, let's still remain chill, because at the end of the day, if the actual story and the campaign delivers the way a fourth Metroid Prime is supposed to, then who cares? If the multiplayer is bad, but the rest of the game is exactly what it's supposed to be and is amazing, then it literally does no damage to the game or to the name, the brand. Not the same way Metroid Prime Federation Force did. So that's what I have to say about that. It will be interesting to see. Very excited. I gotta believe by E3 we're gonna hear about Metroid Prime 4. You know, I mean, I've already put my chips on E3 itself. You know, I could be wrong, so it could show up before then. I'm personally expecting it to just be at E3. But whenever they show it to us, let's just wait and see, man. Are we gonna see multiplayer or are we not? And so now I want to hear what you guys have to say. Like, do you think it could be a good thing? Do you think that we should expect it? Or do you think Nintendo would never do it? Or do you think if they did, it would be a stupid move and nothing but a bad thing for the game? Whatever you want to say, all opinions are welcome here. I want to hear you guys discuss Metroid Prime 4, and that's going to be it for me today. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R, and I'll catch you next time on another video.